All right. Thanks a lot, Rob, and welcome, everybody. We really appreciate the time that you took out of your day to be with us today. We know you guys are busy out there and you're trying to make a lot of money, but we have a very important message to get across today, so we do appreciate your participation. So like Rob said, my name is Jason. I'm the sales rep for the Medicare supplement product line here at Mutual, and I'm joined by Tim Algren and Tim Lake, who are the brain power in our underwriting department. So we're really excited to be able to pick their brain today and really focus on how we can get more underwritten business. So let me just start off by talking a little bit in general of why we wanted to do this call today. There's no secret that we want your underwritten business. Underwritten business is more profitable to us as a company. People that have to go through an underwriting process have to pass certain checks. That way we can identify the good risks for us to bring on as a company, and the claims experience on that section of the business overall is much more favorable. That allows us to offer more competitive rates for a longer period of time. That way, if you're trying to focus on Mutual of Omaha as your primary carrier for your Medicare supplement business, you're trying to qualify for the Dominican Republic next year, you're trying to take advantage of all of the various incentive programs that we have, you're going to have an easier time doing that if you have a competitive rate to offer to your clients. And if we can get more of that underwritten business, that allows us to accomplish that goal. So we really want to help you understand where our underwriting guidelines fall relative to our competitors, maybe better understand where our underwriting sweet spots are. We want to make that process more efficient for you. If we just decline all of the apps that you submit to us, we may come to the point where we don't get any more of your underwritten business, and we definitely don't want that. We want your underwritten business, so we want to help you be better field underwriters, better identify what risks that we want to take on as a company, and we're going to dive into a little bit more of that today, dive into the weeds so that we can accomplish that goal. The other thing that I want to point out before we do that is just help you to understand the opportunity that you have by focusing on the underwritten market as a whole. I think a lot of people get into Medicare because it's a simplified process, both from a prospecting standpoint as well as an enrollment standpoint. People can make a lot of money focusing on that T65 prospect. There is no underwriting process, as we all know, for people that are within their initial enrollment period. So you can make a lot of sales in a very quick amount of time, and that's going to translate into a lot of money. But I think it also is known that people that are within their initial enrollment period are inundated with calls from agents from within their local community, as well as call centers that are halfway across the country. They're getting their mailboxes stuffed with mailers and postcards. A lot of people are vying for that individual's business. But people that are beyond that enrollment period, those people aren't getting nearly as many phone calls. So you have an opportunity to focus on that market. You're not going to come up against nearly as much competition, and you have a very real value proposition that you can tie to reviewing that person's Medicare supplement coverage. I mean, who's not going to want to set up an appointment with you where you can help them to save some money? Who's not going to want to schedule an appointment when you're telling them that you can help save them $30 a month on their Medicare supplement coverage? The caveat there, sure, they have to pass through an underwriting process, but it is an untapped market. It is a market that presents a huge prospecting opportunity. And it's a great way that you can keep your current clients on the books. Are you doing annual reviews with your clients? Are reviewing their coverage? Is it the best coverage for them today as it was 2 or 3 years ago? And again, if they are healthy enough to move, this is a great marketing touch point that you can have with those individuals to ensure that you remain their agent for years to come. That's more renewal income for you. That's happier customers out there, and hopefully you can keep them with Mutual of Omaha. Okay? So that's kind of the context for our talk today. We're going to help you to better understand where those underwriting sweet spots are. The last thing I want to talk about before we do dive into those weeds is just how our rates look for the people that are going to have to go through an underwriting process. So this map here shows our rate. Hopefully you can see that at the top. This is our female rate for the Plan G with a household discount applied for age 70. So we offer very competitive rates for older clients in a lot of areas all over the country, okay? It should be known that this is not our rate relative to all competitors, just the national players out there. So you've got the blue companies, you got Aetna, you got Cigna, and you got United Healthcare. Those are the competitors that we most frequently try and come up against in a favorable light. So that's why we're looking at that comparison today. But again, very competitive rates relative to those national players. Okay, so let's do that now. Let's dive into the weeds. So just in general, I want you to understand that Medicare supplement underwriting is simplified underwriting. It's not like that long-term care underwriting process. It's not like that underwriting process for IULs and these fully underwritten life products. Even though people that are beyond their initial enrollment period have to go through an underwriting process, it is still simplified underwriting. So it's just the applications on the application. A lot of them are knockout questions, but a lot of them are not. You're just going to respond in a yes or no fashion, and you're going to get a very good idea on whether or not your client is insurable just based on the health questions that are contained within the application packet itself. And then the other thing to point out, because it's simplified underwriting, there's no APS requirement, there's no MIB requirement. There are random telephone interviews, which can happen based on how the questions are answered on the application. And the first question I have for our dynamic duo here today is, what are some other reasons in which an interview might be requested from the underwriter? Can you guys kind of add a little bit more color to that?
Absolutely, Jason. This is Tim Algren. And first of all, I'd like to thank the invitation to let us join you. We really appreciate that. But back to the interview. We feel the interview is becoming more common in the industry. We typically will do an interview when we identify a gap between possibly the information that's being represented on the application as compared to some of those other sources we have, such as the pharmaceutical report or a claim history. So we're identifying a gap, and what we want to do is just provide some clarity around the diagnosis and prescriptions and the multiple medical conditions that we run into.
Okay, that's a good answer. And we were talking before a couple weeks ago, and I know that it's frequent when an application may be filled out in which pain is listed, and pain is not a diagnosis, correct? That's the result of the diagnosis. But if you are writing pain on the application, that may be something in which an interview might be requested, right? You want to get more answers in which you're running into that. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say, this is Tim Lake. Pain is one that we see quite a bit, typically on pain type medications, hydrocodone, things like that. The other one that we see a lot on is like a warfarin or any type of blood thinner medication. The diagnosis could be listed as blood thinner. Well, that's what the medication does. We'd call to try to get clarification as to why the individual may need to be on a blood thinner.
All right, good information. Moving along, just some more general tips on how you're answering the questions on an underwritten application. And I alluded to this before, but all of the questions on the application are yes, no. We just recently, and we're still going through that process, we reorganized how the health questions are listed on the application, because again, some of them are true knockouts. If yes is responded to, the client is not eligible for coverage, but there are some others in which there is a little bit of some gray area. You can answer yes to that question, and you could still see that application issued. So just make sure you understand, which questions are which, and I think that's going to, again, help you to be a good field underwriter to make this whole process a little bit more efficient. Let's see here. So another question we got for the guys. We recently changed how those questions are organized. Can you talk a little bit more about these changes that were instituted, why they were done in the first place, and some of that.
Yeah, I think the changes on the application were twofold. Jason talked earlier about how we try to balance. We can't reject every application, or else that doesn't do anybody any good. So we're trying to balance our risk tolerance to the questions on the application. I think that's why you're seeing some changes in the application wording. I think the second part of that is the perception that some of those questions had originally, rather punitive. So we're trying to at least recognize the customer's experience when they fill out an application and really kind of enhance that experience. We've done a lot of work in studying our target segments, and one of the key things of our customers is that they want to have the reliance on the information on the application and understand that they just really want to be sure that what they're doing is the correct thing. And so what we're trying to do is tailor some of that wording around the application so it's understandable.
Okay, good deal. And then just to show you guys some of those changes that were made, here's a screenshot from an application. I believe I pulled this from the Illinois application. I know we got a lot of strong distribution in that state. I'm sure we have some agents from Illinois dialed into the call today, but this just kind of reiterates what we just talked about. You can see up there, these are all the sections or questions that fall within the Part A section. If any of these are answered yes, then the applicant is not eligible. And then here we have Part B. So these are the ones that if no's responded to, still eligible. You might see a higher probability of a telephone interview. But this is just some of the things we're doing to add more clarity to that application process and hopefully make that underwritten app submission a more efficient process for you. You guys have anything else to add on these questions? Yeah, the only thing I would mention is, and I've heard this from you guys before, just make sure you're reading the question word for word. You know, I think we see on occasion some instances where an interview is requested just because maybe the question is responded to one way, but at the note section at the end, you see something that may contradict that. So we want to ask some follow-ups in that regard. But yeah, just make sure you're asking each question word for word. That's probably the best advice we got for you right here.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jason. Back to the customer experience, they have a contact with their producer, their agent, and they just want to be able to understand the process and realizing that we're typically dealing with the population, an older population. They just need to really have established the clarity around the questions, and if you're really deliberate with that, I think you're providing that experience to the customer at a much better level.
Good deal. Okay, so now I want to get into a specific condition, and you know, we're talking about people that are now at least 65 years old or getting older, they're growing more frail. One of the more popular conditions, I shouldn't say popular, but common, it's never popular, but one of the more common conditions we see with this demographic is diabetes, right? We're seeing it more and more as a diagnosed condition. And we don't want you to think that we will always decline any applicant that has this sort of diagnosis. We've taken steps to add more clarity on what is insurable and what's not. That's contained within our underwriting guidelines document. Hopefully you've seen that. We can send that out as a resource after the call. So hopefully you guys can review that afterward as well. But diabetes is one that, because there are different levels of severity, there's a lot of complicating conditions that frequently come along with a diabetes diagnosis. I think it's important to have more clarity around when it's insurable and when it's not. So can you guys talk just a little bit about where we draw that line between insurability and uninsurability relative to diabetes?
Yeah, I think this revision in the application, you know, that we've shown a couple of screenshots of kind of help with that. So if you look under that, the Part A, question 15 asks about diabetes, and it lists a number of complications. Those are the ones that we're, you know, concerned with from a risk standpoint. for the most part, that if they have that combination of condition, we will pass on insuring that risk. Section B talks about, I believe it is question 18, that talks about diabetes with high blood pressure. So a person with diabetes and high blood pressure is someone that we potentially could insure. The main factor surrounding that is the control and stability. So as Jason, as you mentioned, the underwriting guidelines typically go into some further detail as far as that. We look for 2-year stability typically, no changes in medication, the frequency or dosage for the diabetes, blood pressure medications from that standpoint. So if someone shows the ability to stay controlled and stable with that, there is the potential to be insurable.
Okay, good deal. And then I'm going to stay on this slide for this next question, but it is somewhat different than what you see on this slide. It's not related to diabetes at all. But I make the point that our pricing strategy is to refresh our rates in states that have fallen off from a competitive standpoint, and we'll utilize one of our affiliate companies' paper to do that. Now, if any agents on the call today have had a client in the company A's paper, whatever company A was, we released those new rates, and if we take them through the underwriting process, get them into the new company's paper to help save them money, because they were a customer of ours beforehand, we'll take a look at their past claims history in addition to the standard underwriting process. So just want to verify with the guys in the room that that's the case, and if they have any other detail they want to add there.
Sure. Yeah, claim history is utilized when we have a person that we're moving from one mutual product to another mutual product. And so a real deep dive into history, medical history of a person is available to us. We try to do a really good job with those, taking into consideration the medical history and the severity of the conditions. We also know that if we do decline somebody, they do have an opportunity to shop around. So it may be a customer that we lose. And so we're trying to take that into consideration when we do the claim history reviews and that sort of thing. So if at any time there is a decline, that opens a discussion with the customer. We'll provide that customer the detail of why we declined them. And so the producer sit down and have a discussion with them and try to match it up with some of our underwriting guidelines. And if at any times that you might see a gap in that, then the customer certainly has a right to reapproach us and say, either give me more details or provide medical records.
Okay, and then finally today, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some quick hits. Again, we want to make sure that you guys understand and are utilizing all the resources that we make available to you. Just a quick plug for our e-application. If you're using paper apps, you're more of a traditional old school type of agent, and that's what you're comfortable with, absolutely continue to use the paper applications. We'll take the business any way that we can get it. But the e-application is another tool that helps allow you to submit more business in an efficient manner. And relative to the health questions on the application, it does provide live feedback. So if it is one of the questions in which your client is not medically eligible, you click yes on that radial button. It will tell you right then and there that your client isn't eligible for coverage. So make sure you're utilizing that. We also have an underwriting support line. So if you want to pre-screen clients, you're not sure if they're eligible, even after reviewing our underwriting guidelines, give that number a call. You can speak to an underwriter and get some really good information that way. Is there anything else you guys want to add? Any other questions that someone could ask when they call into that number?
General health questions. If you're going out to meet with someone and you know a little bit about their health history, and before you go out there, you just kind of want to double check some questions, feel free to call us. That line is staffed by the actual underwriters. So when you're calling that number, you're going to speak to, a live underwriter that's going to give you, instant feedback on, which way to proceed, if depending on the information that or the questions that they can answer at that point. Jason mentioned the the pre-screen. So if you have somebody that's an existing client with us, you want us to maybe take a peek at their claim history before going out to meet with them, we'll be happy to do that. In addition to the 800 line, we do have a direct email inbox that you guys can send a request to. Typically have 24 to 40 hour turnaround time on getting a response back to you through that portal as well. So,
and what is that email?
That is M as in Mary, S as in Sam, U as in umbrella, W as in Walter at mutualofomaha.com. So MSUW at mutualofomaha.com.
All right. And then I also wanted to make a quick plug on our underwriting guidelines document. I mentioned this just a couple slides ago. This is a very good resource and probably the best resource that we have from an underwriting perspective. You can download a PDF copy on Sales Professional Access, and just a couple quick screenshots here. It shows, and I know that's probably a little hard to read, but it does list all of the uninsurable conditions. So if your client that has any of these diagnosed conditions, well, right off the bat, they're not going to be a good candidate for MedSup, but we could probably talk about, some other Plan B options, critical illness, cancer, heart attack, and stroke, something like that. It also lists all of the declinable prescription drugs. So if they're taking any of those, they're uninsurable as well. I just had these two screenshots. So is there anything else within that doc that you think it would be worth mentioning at this point?
Yeah, just one plug on the underwriting guide. It is a tremendous resource. When we build our guide, our rules and underwriting, really this is our starting point. This is where we jump off on. It has rules as far as open enrollment, guaranteed issue. It's state specific, it's product specific. So it really gives you a lot of details about how we eventually will look at an application.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I got a copy at my desk, and I probably look through it every day. When you're getting, questions from agents from all over the country, and a lot of those are very, they're state-specific questions, very nuanced. It's hard to memorize all that stuff, right? And if you're an agent that writes business in multiple states, this is going to be a very good resource for you going forward. And then finally,
make a quick note too. The underwriting guide is available on this presentation for you to download. For anybody that's on the phone call today, you can download the underwriting guide for you to take a look at. And if you look on the control panel there, and it's there for you to download as well.
Thanks for that. And then the final thing I want to touch on before we open it up, if there are any questions, I just wanted to make mention of our broker bonus incentive that we have running right now through at least September 30th. Right now we're figuring out if it's something that we want to extend through the end of the year. But right now it's going to end on September 30th. This is a regular cash for apps incentive. The different spin on it this time is we're going to pay you a whole bunch more money for your underwritten business. So if you have any clients that have had the same MedSup for several years, they are healthy enough to move, we want to take a shot at that underwritten business. So please send that to us. How you qualify for the payout with this program, you have to write 5 MedSups in 1 month. If you do, you qualify. And there has been a bit of confusion on this. So we're going to count everything towards the 5 minimums. That counts guaranteed issue, that counts all plans, that counts all business written in any of the states beyond what you see listed here. But once you qualify with that 5 minimum, you will get the payout. The payout is only going to be for the F, G, and N plans in the states that you see listed there, and again, only for underwritten and open enrollment apps, okay? But it's a great way to, make a little bit extra money. It's not going to take away from your traditional compensation, whatever structure or level you're on. You're still going to get that. This is just bonus money for you. So make sure you know how it works and you're taking full advantage of it. Okay? Well, that's all we got. Thanks for your participation today. Once again, I'm Jason. And Tim, thank you very much for your participation today as well. It's always nice to have a resource on this stuff.